words come to mind when you hear the word daffodil? The average adult would respond with spring, beauty, yellow, sunshine. Now, what words come to mind when you hear the word dandelion? The average adult would respond with weed, weed killer, roundup, nuisance. In contrast, if you ask the average 5-year-old what words come to mind when they see a dandelion, they would respond with pretty, fun, flower for mommy, make a wish. Many of you may be parents and can remember a time that your child collected dandelions from your overgrown lawn that you meant to mow last week, or maybe that's lingering on that honey-do list. Others of you may have a memory yourself of collecting dandelions and weaving them into a necklace or a crown, or maybe simply taking it in seed form and blowing it to make a wish. You see, children see dandelions in the same way that adults see daffodils. They see both as beautiful yellow flowers, and they see joy, not nuisance, in the attributes of a dandelion. And this is the exact same view that the average child has on people with disabilities. We as adults can use the common childhood experience of the dandelion to remind us to shift our perspectives on people with disabilities and inspire us to find those abilities within ourselves to give away. I was still very much a child myself, an 18-year-old college student at the University of Georgia when I started volunteering for a nonprofit called Extra Special People. ESP serves 60 individuals with developmental disabilities through 6 weeks of summer camp. I fell in love with the mission of ESP as I served as a camp counselor the year and summer after my first year of college. It was that summer that our founder and director was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. She passed away 3 short months later, and the future of our organization was uncertain. I had the opportunity to step in as the executive director at the age of 19. Now, years later, I am certain that sometimes you choose your job and other times it chooses you. ESP now serves over 425 individuals with disabilities and their families throughout 30 counties in Georgia. We do this with 8 weeks of summer camp, 20 after-school enrichment programs, and ongoing family support. You see, ESP is not a service. ESP is a way of life. It has not only transformed the lives of individuals with disabilities and their families, but the lives of an entire community. ESP's growth has inspired my growth and has inspired my family's growth. As I raise 3 children without disabilities, I've had several profound experiences that have opened my eyes to see the shift in a child's mind to the shift in an adult's mind on disability and difference. One afternoon several years ago, I arrived at my son's after-school program, eager to pick him up after a long day's work. I came up from behind him, ready to squeeze him, when I overheard him and his friend talking. His friend said, "My mom's a doctor. What does your mom do?" And my 5-year-old Owen said, "My mom works at ESP. Do you know what ESP is?" And his friend shook his head, "No." And Owen responded, "Well, it's like, if you're really cool, then you get to be in a wheelchair. And if you get to be in a wheelchair, you get to go to ESP." I stood there in profound admiration. This was nothing we had talked about, nor anything that we had ever discussed. This is nothing I had ever instilled in him, And it had nothing to do with the way I raised him and everything to do with the fact that he was simply a 5-year-old child. In his mind and in the mind of an average child, he saw difference and disability as something cool, something positive, something intriguing, something dandy. And maybe since I was so young when I took over ESP, my mindset had never shifted either. But we as adults, we can be disenchanted by difference. We can feel awkward engaging people with disabilities. We can feel intimidated talking to somebody in a wheelchair, afraid that we might hurt them, and in doing so, we miss the opportunity to notice their beautiful smile or their adorable outfit. Or we may feel nervous to talk to someone with Down syndrome, afraid we might offend them or their family, and in doing so, we miss the opportunity to see the joy in which they see the world. Or maybe we're quick to judge a tantrum in the restaurant, not realizing it's not a lack of parenting. Rather, the child has autism. And in doing so, we miss the opportunity to see the abilities of that child and that family. When we fail to shift our perspectives, we fail to see opportunity. Only in the last century have we begun to see a dandelion as a weed. For many centuries before us, and still in some cultures, the dandelion is seen for its medicinal purposes. It's ground and put in tea or put in a salad. While the average American may spray weed killer on a dandelion, many farmers throughout our country look to them as the first positive indicator of growth. And innovators have recently begun to notice the benefits of dandelions. Bridgestone now grows dandelions to use them as a natural rubber in tires. As we begin to shift our perspectives on dandelions, maybe it's time for us to take some notes from our 5-year-old selves on difference and disability. In my 15 years at ESP, I have seen that people with disabilities have unmatched abilities. They have the one-of-a-kind ability to break down barriers. They are unfiltered and untainted. Many individuals with disabilities have a joy that is transformative. In fact, when we noticed this trend at ESP, we started a social enterprise model that started with a Kickstarter campaign called Java Joy. The goal? A mobile coffee cart that goes into businesses and organizations run by people with disabilities. We call them Joyristas, who give away coffee and transformative joy. I remember one of the first gigs that we were offered. It was a large manufacturing plant. We rolled in the cart at 5:45 a.m., and the first shift's workers began to come by, looking at the cart with really skeptical faces. I stood there and watched, growing nervous at the rejection our Joyristas may face. Would the joy transform life's most hardened blue-collar workers? The first shift's break came, and the employees were drawn to the cart by the poignant smell of well-brewed coffee. They arrived eager for a caffeine boost, and the interaction began. Our Joyristas received them with a big smile, a warm cup of coffee, a big hug, and a small little card with an inspirational quote. And then it happened. One by one by one, the hardened bodies began to melt, and the stiff faces began to smile in return. The employees came back for their second and third breaks, many of them skipping out on lunch for the chance for just one more hug. It worked. The joy is an ability that only the joyristas, individuals with disabilities, our dandelions possess. We were later told that the employees shared that this was their most favorite day in the history of the years they had worked for their company. The most significant part of the dandelion, to me, is the spectrum of its life cycle. It starts as a root, grows into a stem, buds into a beautiful flower, and as it ages, it turns into a ball of seeds. Its last act in life is to multiply. What we've been able to do at ESP and through Java Joy is capture the ability where most people see disability. And not just capture it and keep it to ourselves, but capture it, magnify it, and give it away. What we're hoping to do at ESP is help people to transform their minds back to their 5-year-old selves, where they see people with differences as cool for their abilities, for the goodness that they bring to this world. As a 19-year-old, I had no idea what my abilities were. As I failed and worked through a struggling nonprofit, I was forced to look inside of myself and focus more on the abilities that I had than my many disabilities and disadvantages. It has been my greatest honor to spend the last 15 years capturing those abilities and giving them away as I make a difference in the lives of others. My hope for you is this. As you walk in your yard this spring and you see a little something yellow poking through, look at that dandelion for the beauty that it is and the beauty that it could be. Grind it for tea, put it in your salad, or maybe simply pick it in seed form and blow it to make a wish. But more than that, I hope that you will shift your perspectives on people with disabilities. The next time you see someone with a disability, don't let your trepidation stop you. Take a moment to engage with them and see the joy that they have to offer. Capture the goodness of those around you. But most importantly, capture that goodness inside of yourself. What would a 5-year-old say your abilities are? What makes you dandy? Capture that goodness, magnify it, and be inspired by the dandelion to spend a portion of your life giving it away. Thank you.